Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Great Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Well, here it is, another Wednesday, and I do have a new topic for you today. That topic is dogs and cats. Should vegans keep them? Now, I know this is a very controversial subject, and meat eaters are of the opinion, most of the meat eaters that you'll meet are of the opinion that vegans should not keep dogs or cats at all, because they think that a dog or a cat, being from a carnivore line, must eat meat. Now, this is a little bit misguided of a conclusion. It's based on assumptions and old prejudices about eating meat. Old prejudices that are rooted very deep in people's consciousnesses about the necessity for meat. And they think it's necessary for humans too, so why wouldn't it be necessary for our four-legged furry friends? Well, I felt this way for a while. I thought, well, maybe it's okay for a dog to be a vegan, but cats should definitely not be vegans because they're obligate carnivores and they have to have meat. And I thought this for a long time and thought that vegans shouldn't keep carnivores as pets, especially cats. But recently I've had a change of heart. And it just came over me all of a sudden. I realized people love their cats so much. How can I ask people or ask anyone to give up their beloved pet just because they're a vegan and believe in a vegan lifestyle and love all animals, you know, the livestock animals too. So I had a change of heart. So I did a truckload of research. And after doing a ton of research, I have for you some facts, some basic facts about cat nutrition and dog nutrition and the nutrients that they need. Now, a dog doesn't require all the nutrients that a cat requires, but it's a good idea for them to have these nutrients anyway, to have the same nutrients that a cat gets. And the reason is because some older dogs, once they get older, they have trouble converting amino acids. They have trouble converting amino acids, and they have greater nutritional needs, greater need for protein. Even adult humans that are older have an increased requirement for protein. And they have trouble converting amino acids too. Humans have trouble converting amino acids. So if humans have trouble converting amino acids when they get older, then dogs will have the same problem. Now, dogs can be vegans because they're omnivores, but they still need to be very carefully supplemented to make it work for them. And L-carnitine is one of the nutrients that's required for a dog. Without L-carnitine, a dog's heart muscle gets flabby and it gets heart murmur and all sorts of heart problems. So a dog must have L-carnitine, and you must get it a feed that contains L-carnitine. A cat requires L-taurine. So I have a list here of nutrients that are required for a cat, and these should be also applied to a dog because dogs need the same nutrients as cats. Cats need lots of taurine, arginine, L-cysteine, and methionine, vitamin A, arachidonic acid, DHA and EPA, histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine, niacin, methylcobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, and L-carnitine. So these are all necessary nutrients for any dog or cat, especially older dogs will have the same nutrient requirements as cats. And the way that you can get most of these amino acids from a combination of grain and soy, or grain and lentils, that's another, or grains and peas, that's another possibility. Or you can supplement all the amino acids, but you have to have a base. So you have to have some, like a pea base or a lentil base or a soy base as a protein source for your dog or cat, and it's got to be 30% protein. So I did a lot of research, and I found some pet foods that are good, but they don't contain all the nutrients that are necessary, so you have to supplement. And one thing you can do is feed a combination of Evolution for cats and Vegecat Phi. And this combination of Evolution for cats and Vegecat Phi will give your dog or cat all the nutrition that it needs. Now, the Vegecat Phi is a powder, so you have to add it to some wet food. So I recommend making your own wet food, and I'm going to give you a recipe in a little while. But the crude protein content of Evolution is 30%, and blue buffalo cat food is 32%, so it's not much difference. It's very similar nutritional profile to Evolution. So Evolution is fine, and even Blue Wilderness that everyone brags about is only 40% protein, so not much more protein in Blue Wilderness, so it's not that great. Crude fat 14%, ash content minimum 6%. Serve Vegecat Phi with cooked tofu. So I'm going to give you a recipe in a second, but the Vegecat Phi, the basis is nutritional yeast, so you don't really need to add additional nutritional yeast, but it would be a good idea because you want the food to be as tasty as possible for your four-legged companion. Okay, so some of the nutrients in Vegecat Phi it contains arginine, and it contains arachidonic acid, Vegecat Phi. So that's a good source of those nutrients for your dog or cat. And you also want to add a DHA and EPA supplement to your dog or cat's wet food. So DHA plus EPA for a small dog or for a cat, 1 capsule per week should be enough. And 2 sources of B12. So once a week, add 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin and 1,000 micrograms of adenosylcobalamin. And what you can do is you can get yourself a mortar and pestle and grind up the tablets and add it to your dog or cat's food, to their wet food. It won't sit on top of dry food unless you wet your dry food, which I don't recommend because then the dog won't or cat won't like the taste. But yeah, on top of their wet food is fine. And so DHA and EPA, Vegecat Phi, Evolution, and 2 sources of B12. Now, the reason that you have to have both Evolution and Vegecat Phi is because the Evolution also contains L-Carnitine. Vegecat Phi does not. They expect your dog or cat to convert the methionine and the lysine into L-Carnitine, but like we said, older animals don't necessarily do that, and cats definitely do not do that. So you have to supplement with L-Carnitine. Now, one thing you can do is you can feed Vegecat Phi plus L-Carnitine exclusively to your dog or cat, and that should be fine too. And you can skip the Evolution because Evolution contains corn and soy. And if you're trying to avoid corn or giving corn or soy to your furry companion and you don't believe in corn and soy. And the thing about Evolution, they do make, if you go to Evolution's website, they do make corn and grain and grain-free dog or cat food. They make cat food, but they contain other things that might be allergenic, like sunflower seeds, and sunflower seeds are very allergenic. So that might not be such a hot idea to give them the soy and grain-free. If your dog has a soy allergy, if your cat has a soy allergy, then definitely go with the soy and grain-free formula. And I believe it contains something like peas and sunflower seeds. So don't forget Vegecat Phi. Oh, if you're going to feed wet exclusively, that's homemade. Vegecat Phi plus the tofu base plus L-Carnitine. You have to add L-Carnitine. I recommend Acetyl-L-Carnitine because that's best absorbed. Plus DHA and EPA once a week. Plus once a week the methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin. And actually humans have a requirement for adenosylcobalamin also, which is something that I haven't noted before, but I've done more research recently and found out that you need both the methylcobalamin and the adenosylcobalamin because they don't convert easily. So you need both. And so I have a recipe here for homemade peanut butter treats for dogs and cats. Here's one recipe. 1 cup of oats, and make sure they're gluten-free and organic. They must be organic because glyphosate is very bad for an animal's digestive tract. 1/3 of a cup pumpkin puree. 1/4 cup natural peanut butter. It must be natural peanut butter, not the kind they add the hydrogenated oils to. Natural peanut butter, and if it has no sugar, that's perfect. Just peanuts and salt should be the only 2 ingredients, and it's hard to get it sugar-free and salt-free, but if you can, that's even better. And you can add up to 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast to these treats. So preheat the oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Put oats in food processor, grind to powder. Reserve some for rolling. Add pumpkin puree and peanut butter. Whirl until well combined in crumbs form. Cut out cookies or squares from rolled out dough. Lay on parchment-lined baking sheet and bake for 25 to 30 minutes, depending on how crunchy you want them. Let cool completely before serving. Store in fridge in sealed Ziploc bag. And the source for this recipe is it doesn't taste like chicken. Another thing you might want to consider for your cat specifically is cat grass. They might have a nutritional need for cat grass, and you can get gluten-free cat grass that's not based on wheatgrass from www.catgrass.net. And the brand you want is Lucy's Special Buck Oat Seed. And you buy Lucy's Special Buck Oat Seed, you plant it and water it in a very small flower pot or in a tray. You can get a tray. And 1 pound is $19.40. And it plants 25 3-inch flower pots. And it fades in a couple of weeks, so you have to keep replanting. So that's the information on the cat grass for your furry friend. And so now okay, so if you want to go all organic, which I recommend that you go all organic for your cat or dog food, then you want to skip Evolution, because Evolution, they might use glyphosate to kill the the soy and corn to make it easier to harvest. So Evolution might have glyphosate in it, even though Evolution, on the Evolution website, they do have non-GMO corn and soy feed. It's still, they still might use glyphosate. So what I recommend for a wet cat food or dog food is tofu. Tofu is, and always get organic tofu. Don't buy any other kind. Organic tofu. Tofu is very high in protein. It's a complete protein. It contains all the nutrients your dog or cat needs. If you're opposed to soy in any way, you can always use lentils mixed with oat flour. But the best thing to use is soy because it contains a complete protein, and well, it's almost a complete protein. You do need to add some oat flour to it, but I'm going to give you a recipe. So, house organic extra firm tofu. Now, a cat or a small dog would eat 1/12 of a block at one sitting. And that contains 2.7 grams of protein and is 46% protein. And contains 23.3 calories. Organic oatmeal per 2 teaspoons. So you would want to add 2 teaspoons to the same serving. 0.6 grams of protein, but it contains some of the rarer amino acids that you want to add to your tofu mix. And 14.7 calories, and it contains 17.4% protein. So oatmeal is the highest in protein of all the grains, and it helps to make a complete protein. Nutritional yeast, 2 teaspoons. 1.32 grams of protein, 9.9 calories, and nutritional yeast is very high in protein. It's 53.3% protein. Total protein for a cat or a small dog is 4.6 grams of protein per serving, and it's 38.5% protein. So it compares favorably with Blue Wilderness, Blue Buffalo, and all of those natural, this wet food compares favorably with all of those. Plus it contains natural moisture, which is good for keeping your pet regular. By comparison, Blue Wilderness dry cat food has 40% protein, so 38.5% is very favorable. So you drain the tofu and press some of the water out with your fingers, and you just press it, okay? And then you crumble the tofu block into a bowl. Mix in 1/2 cup of oatmeal that has been ground fine in a food processor or blender. So you're going to use a whole block of tofu, 1/2 cup of oatmeal, and 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. Mix well. Moisten with water until moist but not soggy consistency is reached. So you do want to moisten it with water. And it shouldn't take more than 3 to 4 tablespoons of water to moisten it. Probably less. So just add it a little bit at a time until you reach the right amount. Okay, so you dump out onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. Very important that it be parchment-lined. Bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. Let cool for 10 minutes. Then after it's cool, add Vegecat Phi and contents of 1/2 capsule of L-Carnitine. Discard the gelatin capsule. You don't want your dog or cat chewing on a gelatin capsule just before serving. So add the Vegecat Phi just before serving. You don't want it getting frozen in the refrigerator, and you don't want it baking in the oven. You want the Vegecat Phi raw and ready to go because it's got all its nutrients when it's raw. when it gets frozen or when it gets baked in the oven, it loses a whole bunch of its nutrients. So feed the Vegecat Phi, add it to the serving that you're giving your dog or cat right then. Add it right then, and don't add it later, or add it to the food and then put it in the refrigerator or put it back in the oven to heat it up. Don't do that. Add the Vegecat Phi at the end, just before serving, to each individual serving. Once a week, add 1,000 micrograms methylcobalamin tablet and adenosylcobalamin tablet crushed to food. So you want 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin and 1,000 micrograms of adenosylcobalamin crushed. Add it to the food, and just do that once a week, and add it to the food and mix it in well. Discard. Okay, so once or twice a week, add DHA and EPA derived from algae. It's very important to be derived from algae because if it's derived from fish, it contains mercury. And add the contents of capsule to food. Discard capsule just before serving. Mix well. If cat is still hungry, feed evolution or more tofu mixture. So that's the story. And Vegecat Phi does something very specific that's good for cats. It acidifies the urine. And if a cat's urine gets too alkaline, it can get FUD, F-U-D-D, which is in which life-threatening magnesium crystals form in the urinary tract. So you don't want it to get urinary tract problems. You don't want it to get FUD. They used to call it FOOS, in case you remember that from the past. But FUD is life-threatening, so Vegecat Phi prevents that. And that's one of the reasons to serve grains like corn and food like soy, because it's low in magnesium. I don't know if oatmeal is low in magnesium. All I know is it's high in protein and high in fat, which your dog or cat needs. So another thing you can add that's very good to their, in addition to the DHA and EPA tablet, or not tablet, the capsule, the contents of the capsule, is flaxseed oil or ground flaxseed. Not whole flaxseed, ground flaxseed, or the oil. And not only will ground flaxseed help keep your cat or dog or cat regular, but also provide omega-3 fatty acids that your dog or cat needs. So lentils or peas or tofu as the basis, and I recommend tofu because it does contain a complete protein, plus so 1 block of organic, plus the organic gluten-free oatmeal, half a cup, plus half a cup of nutritional yeast. That's the recipe for the dog or cat food. I do recommend that you consider adopting a dog or cat, because the shelters are overflowing and they really need these dogs or cats adopted. So it's a good thing to adopt a dog or cat. But if you adopt a dog or cat, please feed it a vegan diet if you can. If the dog or cat rejects it, you must feed it meat, okay? Especially a cat might reject a vegan diet, and if that happens, you must feed it meat. So it's up to you whether to adopt a dog or cat or not. If you don't believe in owning a dog or cat, then don't. But if you love dogs and cats and you want to adopt, do feed it a vegan diet and make sure it's well balanced. Make sure there's arginine, L-Carnitine, especially the Acetyl-L-Carnitine type, arachidonic acid, taurine, EPA and DHA, and methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin. Those are the essential nutrients that your dog or cat must get, plus a vegan protein source that's complete. I'm Sarah Jane Alpha Wolf signing off. Think about adopting a dog or cat because they really need you. They really need you to care for them.